Good afternoon. This afternoon, we're joined by Mr. Phathizwe Malinga, and he's the Managing Director of Sqwidnet in South Africa. Good afternoon, Phathizwe.
Hey, how are you doing, Tinas?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for chatting with me this afternoon. I'm speaking to you because your industry is one that's absolutely booming from an engineering perspective. So you're obviously with Sqwidnet, and you guys have this big network running in South Africa on which telemetry is being transmitted and continuously growing. Could you maybe speak to me about how this industry has evolved over the last 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely a booming industry. I think I was once referring to it to somebody as the RF market, the radio frequency market, the people who really want to hear a signal quite badly because their delivering a service depends on it. And I think, Autopage and Nashua way back in the 90s, they built their own networks, and those networks are 868 networks or 433 networks, and in simple terms, they're just running on free spectrum. And that obviously led to a good cost base, but at the same time, you had to operate your own network. And so that was the appeal when networks like GSM came along, cellular. Now you don't have to worry about maintaining your own network. You can hop into this cellular, and you can get all the benefits of bigger coverage. And I think now, maybe into the 2010s, and into now the 20s.
Yes.
We're starting to see what we call low power networks come about, which is almost a hybrid. It's a national network that's shared, that isn't owned by you, but goes back to the principle of running on a free spectrum. So the costs really drop quite drastically, but you get the benefit of being everywhere and listening to all of this stuff. So it's been an interesting journey to watch. And a lot of the guys that we work with are still the same engineers who still have a few base stations that they protect out in the hills.
Yeah, I can imagine. I should have actually mentioned at the beginning, Sqwidnet is the operator or the licensed operator, I guess, of Sigfox. So maybe that's important for you to understand, yes. Could you give me an idea of the typical applications that you've seen sprouting and doing really well in South Africa on this mobile network, and maybe specifically ones that would not be expected to do well in other countries?
So the second part of your question is the funny one. Expected not to do well in other countries, and I want to add, and now are thriving in those countries.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
So the first one, and what South Africans have been really good at, and that's just because of the levels of crime that we have in the country, is this uncanny ability of breadcrumbing and finding your car should it just start driving off on its own. And usually most of these cars that drive off on their own try to cross borders and land up in the middle of Africa. And so we've been very good at recovering stolen vehicles. And we've been using our networks to do that. And we went out to the world, and we thought this was a big problem. And we found, no, people don't have a stolen vehicle problem. So our engineers had to now build and use their expertise to fulfill our own need. What's happened in the last year is this new thing called stolen vehicle recovery is taken off worldwide now all of a sudden. I don't know if it's because of our networks, but really it's because of the collaboration and being known throughout the world for what you're doing. All of a sudden, we couldn't find product, we are now producing product for.
That's very interesting. I'm assuming that you also look at your employment statuses within the company, and that you typically employ engineers to do the job. Could you maybe give me an idea of what are the type of skills that you're really after, and maybe the most important type of disciplines that engineers should be focusing on?
I think the good thing about being an engineer is you can really go down any one of these lanes. The bad thing about being an engineer is you won't go down the lanes until you've solved for which one's good for you, right? But the first one, I think, in our space is networking. and that's the network part of it. So being a network engineer involved in radio planning, figuring out how these high sites, how they cross over each other, and really getting down into making sure that you've got good coverage across the country. So it's the first kind of engineer that we see come through. It's not a software networks engineer, it's a radio network engineer. And then the second type of engineer we see come through is the software one, who's playing with software-defined networks. So once the network is up, trying to optimize it and get it to perform very differently to traditional. And then the third type of engineer, which is the one that we all know and love, is the guy who builds little devices that we all are either proud of or hide in shame because it's stuck into a Tupperware container because he didn't think looks were that important. It does what it does. So the device kind of guys, those are the guys that play with modules, they play with chipsets, they're really playing around with the firmware and they usually have a 3D printer lying around. And I think all of those are great avenues to go down. We hire, because we're a network, a lot on the network side, but we've got one or two device engineers, component engineers, so very good. The software side of things we really outsource because the software has been very, very good in the country. So I think if you're going down that road, you have to decide what are you? Are you a hardware person or are you a software person? And I always say you can tell yourself this little joke. How many engineers does it take to change a light bulb? And if the answer is light bulb, that's a hardware problem. Then you're a software engineer.
Yeah, that's good to remember. I will for certain. You've just spoken to your penetrating the market here and getting coverage all over the country. I was fortunate enough to be one of the first adopters of your technology in Stellenbosch, and I know it wasn't easy and there were many challenges. Would you like to just talk us?
How much time do you have? How much time do you have? The first thing that you do and our engineers, they love tech. We all love tech. And the first thing that they did was look at all the different things we can do that are very specific to South Africa. So the first example is just to power this whole thing using solar. So solar panels now on our base stations and the way that our base stations are so compact, we can start getting coverage in various places. And we were in an office park. So we put up one of the solar panels just to check so that in the morning we'll see, has it charged the thing up? In an office park with security of the building and security of the office park. In the next morning, those solar panels were gone. So I think that's the first challenge that we had. But the theft wasn't reserved for to just humans stealing from us. In the one, we went out to a water trough out in the middle of a farm because this guy wanted coverage because he wanted to check on this water trough when the level drops and he can go out and water that so that the wildebeest or whatever livestock he has can come and drink. And 3 days later, that thing stopped transmitting. So we went out there and we didn't find it at all. So it was gone. But there's no way there can be humans in this particular farm setup. And if we picked up the beacon, we picked up that it was transmitting. And so we kind of zoned in on it. And we found a troop of baboons playing with the device. So that's another unique
African experience.
African experience. But theft, I think theft is in the network side. Theft is really the big thing. But on the device side, it always comes down to not elegance, but scale. So you usually come across a really, really great solution that just does what we were supposed to do. But it costs 60,000 to fix a 6 Rand problem, and that's kind of the second problem that we found. But the good thing about South Africa is we actually know how to make things cheaply. So when we find these problems, we actually find the opportunity, and that's how we start exporting to the rest of the world.
That's great. Could you also tell me maybe just a bit of background? How did you end up in a technical field like this? What led you to it?
I think I was destined to be here because I did software, and software development was my growing up. And the type of software programs that I wrote, the project manager thought weren't very good. So I became a project manager, so that because it seemed to be easier to do that, but just criticize software developers. And then I ended up in business. Up in business, and I wanted to work in a field that's fulfilling. So I went into hospitals, and then I worked for Life Healthcare. So it was a really great experience. Really grew up there in terms of understanding business. And then I did the natural progression from hospitals into IoT, because if you spell out hospital, you have to use the word IoT eventually.
Oh, right? Nice.
That's
a nice pitch.
No, it was, but to be serious, I by mistake ended up in the industry. And what appealed to me about the industry is it's all about innovation. And what we were doing in the hospitals is groundbreaking. But you can only innovate so much. You really are constrained with the job is to save lives there. And in this space, I really wanted to get into something that can reach far more people, where we can use our skills to get to rural people even. STEM, not STEM learning it, but STEM in practice, kind of almost. And so I thought, this is a great avenue. I'm going to meet awesome engineers. I'm going to meet awesome entrepreneurs, and we'll go out and solve really big problems.
Yeah, change the world. That's awesome. Maybe let's just do this as a final comment. Yeah. From what I can see, you said the vehicle growth and vehicle theft is something that's grown quite a bit. I hear a lot of people saying that the next big thing is going to be agriculture, and specifically food production and livestock management. Do you see the same type of trend?
In South Africa, it will be a little bit different. I really believe that we've got basics that we want to sort out quickly, and this tech is really helping us in basics. And I always try and crunch my word on basic down to, if it's not security, it's life expectancy, and in our space, life expectancy involves infectious diseases. Welcome to the world we live in now, but it's preventable. That's the nice thing. It's simple and affordable to prevent these kind of diseases. And water is, I think, South Africa's Achilles heel if we don't attend to it. Scarce water. The project that you were very heavily involved in was around schools and just giving them visibility in terms of their water, so that they don't waste water. So I see that being the big thing that takes off in South Africa. But to your point, as soon as we sort out our homes, as soon as we know we have water security, if you call it that, it will then go out into our sustenance farming and immediately into our commercial farm, where we start using IoT to look at the quality of our soil, the soil moisture content, the bacterial spores that might be in the air, because we can pick these things up quite well in terms of parts per thousand or even million. And so in that way we'll get into agriculture. And then I think the other problem that we have, which is hunger, then collides with us. And then you're absolutely right. Now we're in food production, now in agriculture, and now we're in also cold chain, just shipping, farm to fork, and being able to have full visibility of that journey.
Fantastic. Phatizwe, that was very insightful. Thank you very much. And well done for getting this network out there. I think it's in a pretty good state. I know that it's extremely reliable, at least from our perspective. And thank you for your support to the university as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.